Hi.
Hi.
Are we on? So we are in Mocha Geffen, and John and I are re-performing a work titled Soul at Work, in which we talk about the book by Berardi, Soul at Work, while John is working. So we are focusing on suicide. That is the chapter that we'll be focusing on. Do you want to start by summarizing, maybe?
Yeah. So the whole book, Soul at Work, is about change in working conditions, like after Fordist economy, post-Fordist economy, and how we're not only putting our body in labor, but Barty says we're putting our souls into labor. A kind of labor that we do are more cognitive, relational, social, and also we use different ways of, I guess, or there's like a section where he talks about how Prozac can be traced in London's tap water, and we're using drugs, chemicals to basically stay focused and work. There's like a really it's like so weird, like talking about work while working.
Yeah, so to the point of the Prozac culture, which is spoken about in the text, while I was working here about a year ago, I went on Prozac, and it's partially because of like an imbalance in chemistry, of course, but it also has to do with the fact that I was working 6 days a week, multiple jobs, just to survive, right? Getting paid, what is your pay? Mine was $13.75 an hour.
Now it's $14.75.
And there's basically no hope of moving upward into the world at $13.75 or $14.25 an hour.
Yeah, because you get back home, like 1 day a week maybe. If I have like 1 day, I'm like lucky. I've been like working 7 days a week. And you just like have to make your rent and pay your bills, and like I can't produce work, can't progress with my art career, or this, I can't commit to anything because this is like not serious. Like I can't like work like full-heartedly when they're paying me like $14.75 and like only I don't know, what did you think?
I mean, not to like just go on the anecdotal, but it really reminded me of, well, the chapter begins starting with describing aggressive suicides, so people who have murderous intentions while they are committing suicide, and how this is basically like is in line with the rise of capital, the rise of these aggressive suicides. So I was like sitting in the Joker like a couple weeks ago when it came out, and as the movie progressed, I started getting anxious. I started having a panic attack, and it was in part because of the audience, and it was in part how I was made to believe that it was unsafe. You know, the person who gets up several times during the movie is suspicious now. You know, they wouldn't sell single tickets to people in most movie theaters in America for fear of a shooting happening.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I was thinking about on that particular part was just like how the myth of like individuality is tied to like suicides. You know, Schopenhauer and so on and so on. So many philosophers as like attached, like, you know, like existentialists to like that, like attach this like the notion of individuality that is like kind of like a driving force of like neoliberal culture, like onto this like I don't know, it's like weird. It's like a weird cycle. Like, cause like suicide, what Berardi argues is that is social, it's relational, it's like a structural problem. Yeah. That, but like, you know, society always blames an individual for not, you know, like being strong, not being professional, not, you know, like being good at holding on.
Because capitalism is rooted in competition. Right. So there will always be losers, and the losers will outnumber the winners, and those people are made to feel like failures. Yeah. Thus the rise of suicides in a place like China, which is referenced in the text.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and
their booming economy exactly corresponds with the rise of suicides.
And one thing that I thought was interesting was like when they're talking about kamikaze, the like famous suicidal Japanese soldiers just dropping on like, you know, Americans. You know, the meaning of the word kamikaze is apparently divine. What was it? Divine wind. But a lot of people were forced to commit suicide or do kamikaze, and that's kind of interesting too. Then is it really a kamikaze? Like if like society or like power is demanding you to do a self-destructive act?
If the government literally only gives you enough gas to get to where you are supposed to bomb and not to get back.
Right. You know, and then that's kind of like a really microscopic example, but then if you like take it in a larger social parameter, like if our job in this like neoliberal economy and our market, our institutions, our world gives you just enough to function and work, like, and there's like a inherited like or embedded like sense of like humiliation that everyone feels. Like I'm humiliated sometimes working this job, like because I want to do more. I care about the museum as a civic cultural institution, but they're not treating me civil. They're not treating me adequate for what I can offer, and I don't know. How did you feel when you were working at those institutions?
Bad. I'm very glad to be in school and not working anymore. But it's just a temporary. I know it's just a temporary vacation, basically, that will not be lasting. This might be the only time in my life that I'm actually
scholarship, they're legitimately making that. It's just like doing something that wouldn't promise them job afterwards,
Yeah.
And also adjunct faculties just being exploited like shit, getting paid shit and putting too much, just because we all love art, It's like something that's transferred to an individual's in that institution, or just like every institution, but especially in art, that like affected, just because you're like passionate, you need to do more.
Yeah.
But then I also believe that art making is an autonomous activity. I think there's a value in that, and that's something that a lot of people kind of get lost within this book, especially reading it from like a practitioners, like a practitioners or like artists' perspective, who are genuinely caring about what they're making.
Yeah.
And then to tie that back to like economy and finance.
I mean, maybe we could speak to the experience of reading this book. In the past, that I find it extremely depressing and upsetting, to the point in which I have had to stop reading it twice on 2 different occasions, because I was feeling it negatively impact, my day-to-day life. And it's, I think, in part because what the book does is mirror the situation that our generation, as a generalization, is currently in. While standing on guard at MoCA, I am trying to ignore the fact that I'm being exploited for my own sanity, but this book does not allow me to ignore it. It puts it right in my face.
Yeah, but like, I think something that's interesting about this chapter, because I purposely chose a third and fourth, because I thought those are the chapter where like he tries to give some, I don't know, like a way to, or like, the way that he thinks, the way I can't.
I mean, at least for me, like the inherent nihilism. Fucking depressed by it.
Right.
Is that you have to begin to deconstruct the problem as a very important key step in trying to solve the problem, and it can sound overtly negative and like there is no hope, but within that lack of hope, the only reason why we're speaking about it is because we are wanting a better existence.
Yeah. I mean, one thing like that's helpful, I think, to point out is that like Franco B. Berardi comes from like this really particular like group of Marxists. They believed in not working leisure as an answer to capitalism, and some of them in which he was like a part of, he was like really big on like reducing working hours, and but then he kind of also like reflects back on those movements and how reduction of that like kind of led to precarity. Like a lot of it is like a reflection on that too, but I think he holds some values still on just like the joy of life, or just like the quality of life outside of financial just like purely monetary terms. And like the section towards the end where he describes the word wealth, I don't know how you felt about it, but that's pretty. Yeah, it is pretty. I don't know how like viable it is. Like I don't know how much I can trust, but but then you sort of have to believe in that when you're making art, right? Because there's something.
Do you want to read what his definition of wealth is in the book?
Right. Okay. Is there any remedy to the wave of psychopathologies that seems to have submerged the world, while smiling faces promise safety, comfort, warmth, and success from advertising signboards? It may be that social issues can no longer receive answers from politics and need to be referred to psychotherapy. Perhaps the answer is that it is necessary to slow down, finally giving up economists, finally giving up. This is like one thing that Ferrari talks about too, about like overflowing of information, and working as a GA in Mocha, we're constantly exposed to various kinds of information, just like being like, I'm like passively getting information, I'm like watching over the works, and then people get close to it, and I'm like a censor. I just like go. But yeah, so the sectional wealth does not mean a person who owns a lot, but refers to someone who has enough time to enjoy what nature and human collaboration put within everyone's reach. If the great majority of people could understand this basic notion, if they could be liberated from the competitive illusion that is impoverishing everyday's life, the very foundations of capitalism would start to crumble. Sounds pretty, and it describes like art making, I think, that I feel like you and I hold. Like we like do a shitty job, but still try to make work because there's like value that exceeds the finance. Yeah. But then living it brings it back. Like trying to deal with that, like.
Well, maybe now would be a good time to make reference to something that happened just this past week in Los Angeles, which is the Marciano Art Foundation basically mass fired 70 of their lowest paid employees who were trying to unionize. They had just gone public with the attempt to unionize, and within the week they had all been let go, and the museum possibly closed for good. So I mean,
it's just like really fucked up. I don't even know what to say. A lot of people who work at Marciano also works here, and we're all in similar conditions. I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, like that was a really fucked up gesture. And I mean, one thing that I want to remind myself is that like institutions like Marciano Art Foundation can't exist without art and artists, but art and artists can exist without the institution. I just want to remind myself that. I don't know how viable it is. I mean, I need money, so.
I mean, the great thing is that art has existed long before capitalism was constructed, and like however capitalism ends up imploding, right, art will still be being made afterwards. At least that's what I would like to imagine. So when I think about these institutions who I think lean their allegiance more towards art as capital rather than art as this, ineffable thing that we are all after, I assume. I just think it's. I just think we don't really need these institutions. I don't think that Marciano is. I don't think Los Angeles is better off apart from those 70 people who lost their jobs. I don't believe they're better off with them as a presence.
Also another inherent fucked up thing about that whole institution is that everyone go look up Olivia Marciano's LinkedIn page and just look at that and go to any of workers from Marciano. A lot of them are practicing artists. Go look at their CV. You can see how many times were dedicated on the LA art world, or just in terms of making and genuinity and everything. The level is so different. Just the fact that she is the daughter of a big company collector puts her there. And there's a weird shift. We, as coworkers, as we talk about the institution, Mocha, like we talk a lot about like the weird line in which like if you go enough behind within the museum, like things start to change and things that people value as like a work ethic like totally changes. And it's like crazy.
Oh, you're about to go on lunch?
Yeah.
There, I'll. He's going on his lunch break. I see it. Yeah. Should we go outside?
Yeah.
And finish this? I mean, I apologize for being slightly inarticulate.
No, I'm like.
I know.
I feel like I'm like not making sense. No more story. What were we talking about?
I mean, we're talking about Marciano, but I mean, we're kind of rambling. I would love to maybe read some more of the text.
Right.
Like, I think that, honestly, the text does a better job at articulating itself than I can.
Or we can even talk about, like, how
Be back.
the book itself informs our practice, or at least a section, you know? One thing that I wanted to talk about was, because I'm interested in, like...
Let's maybe go on the other side for the
the process of art making, you know? There is, like, already, like, a notion of process art, like, where the way we make, is integral to, like, the end product, you know? It's, like, always, like, part of the work, artists are thinking about it, subjected to criticism, everything, but, like, we don't talk about, the financial part of it, like, you know, how do we afford these materials, or, how do we fund these? Yeah, like, that's totally part of it. That's one thing that I felt with, David Hammond's and his exhibition at Hauser, you know,
or any of his recent exhibitions at blue chip galleries in which he demands, I think it's at 75, no, it's more than that, it's 90% of the sales of his work.
Interesting, 90%. Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Yeah,
it's some sort of crazy deal. You should read the book. I'm sure you already have, maybe if you're in Berlin. But Tell Them I Said No, which features a kind of profile on Hammond's that explains his kind of tumultuous relationship to the market. Anyway,
but I think that's like an interesting thing because like thinking about that as a material too, because that's like totally integral to his practice, right?
Yep.
Like mending of institutional forces and financial forces. That's totally like it's not only the object; it's like the process of getting there.
It's the narrative that if we want to talk about like where art is, like ontologically, you know, it's like not inherently just in the David Hammond's object, but it is in the negotiation of price with the gallery. It is where it is being located, what time is it being shown, who are the people working at said place. I mean, not to, you know, jump all the way to Hauser, but I feel like, you know, I worked at Hauser for a couple of years, and there was also a mass laying off that happened about a year ago in relation to, I'm blanking on the Swiss artist's name, but he's represented by Hauser and Wirth, and he made a work called MAGA, in which he was trying to get the U.S. government to declare Trump's 8 border walls, the examples that were built, as national monuments. And so there was this kind of petition that happened anyway. A lot of the employees at Hauser and Wirth signed this petition, and within a couple months, we were all fired. So anyway, I just want to, like, in relation to Marciano, which is getting a lot of press, like, I know that Hauser didn't at the time. And so, like, you know, I didn't see the David Hammond show, because I don't want to fucking go there. But you know, anyway.
I'm sort of glad that they have like shitty exhibitions. I haven't seen good exhibitions from there for like a while, and I mean, one thing that I want to jump on is I feel like we're like, not even talking about the book, but just
I mean, this is what happened. I mean, I by no means am a theoretician, so we digress.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Yeah. Just like I've been thinking a lot about like where the taste is formed, and one thing that I'm like paying attention with Marciano and like the other big collector museum, the Broad, is that like these institutions with the forces of maybe it comes back social media and this like crazy image-based like info semio-capitalism, like those institutions are generating relevance maybe more than more public civic-minded institutions like LACMA and MoCA, and like Hausenworth, Marciano, Broad. I mean, first of all, Hausenworth is like a for-profit private gallery that is purely like the whole purpose of institution is to make money off of like high-end contemporary art, and Broad and Marciano are people who bought shits from there that are trying to like regenerate, or like I don't know, I like almost think of them as like putting them in like a mixer and like squishing them and like getting every wealth out of like every work, It's interesting. I don't know, like, and like the taste, public's taste is being formed, and relevance is being formed in those kind of institutions, and like it's kind of alarming when these institutions have a good show.
Yeah, I mean it's in part because they have the most robust social media department, and they are choosing work that is catering to a kind of like a selfie culture, for lack of better.
Right.
Maybe let's pick another part of the book and read it real quick, and then sign off, because I think John has to get back to work.
And he needs to get back to school. There's did you read the second chapter, Becoming Precarious?
I read some of it.
Yeah. Maybe
let's read your highlighted section.
Yeah, there was like a really good one that I just like. Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, it was. The neoliberal values presented in the 1980s and 1990s as vectors of independence and self-entrepreneurship revealed themselves to be manifestations of a new form of slavery, producing social insecurity and, most of all, a psychological catastrophe. The soul, once wandering and unpredictable, must now follow functional paths in order to become compatible with the system of operative exchanges structuring the productive ensemble. The soul hardens and loses its tenderness and malleability. Industrial factories use the body, forcing it to leave the soul outside of the assembly line, so that the worker looks like a soulless body. The immaterial factory asks instead to place our very soul at its disposal: intelligence, sensibility, creativity, and language. The useless body lies flatly at the borders of the game field to take care of it and entertain it. We put it through the commercial circuits of fitness and sex. When we move into the sphere of info labor, capital no longer recruits people. It buys packets of time, separated from their interchangeable and contingent bearers. Depersonalized time is now the real agent of the process of valorization, and depersonalized time has no rights. Meanwhile, the human machine is there, pulsating and available, like a brain sprawl in waiting. The extension of time is meticulously cellular. Cells of productivity time, a productive time, can be mobilized in punctual, casual, and fragmentary forms. The recombination of these fragments is automatically realized in the digital networks. The mobile phone makes possible the connection between the needs of semio-capital and the mobilization of the living labor of cyberspace. The ringtone of the mobile phone calls the workers to reconnect their abstract time to the particular flows. I thought that was like a really good summary of the whole book.
Yeah. And on that, I guess we'll let John go back to work. Shall we walk you back in? Is
Um,
that part of it or no?
I don't know.
How much time do you have?
Yeah.